Welcome. Yay, we're here again. This, if you don't know, the customer panel is the highlight of my year. This is now our 4th year doing this. As I was reminded last night at dinner with some customers, 4 years ago when we were in a one-room basement in New York. Wasn't quite a basement, but we've definitely come up in the world, and it's so great to see so many people here and so many faces from the last 4 years and new faces. So delighted to have you join us for our customer panel to kick off the conversation that Brendan started earlier, and we had some sessions even this morning, so we'll continue that conversation. So we'll build on a lot of those themes. So this content from content strategy, how learning leaders build sustainable, impactful journeys. So very much related to what Brendan talked about earlier, and what the future of L&D looks like, what the roles in L&D will look like, and how all of us can be strategic in plotting that over the next couple of years. This isn't, though, the idea to move from sort of a content creation or a cost center to move towards a strategic vision. I think we have to be honest, we've been having this conversation for years. That's not new, that didn't start with AI. That's always been the challenge of learning, that how do you move from the sort of tactical admin side to the strategic side? And we've always run into the challenge of just not enough hours in the day to get all of the content and the admin done, and then also to think about the strategy. So AI has provided the opportunity, but also the challenge of, and the push to, now that we can create content much more quickly, now that we can look at analytics more quickly, we're moving into a world where the manual tasks can be done more quickly. How do we then take up that space as strategic architects of our learning programs? So I want to think about journeys. So that's a bit of a theme of this. So I'll start. I love hearing from L&D people about their journeys of what brought them to their roles. I think that's something unique and about people who work in L&D, is that they have come from really interesting journeys that brought them to this place. Myself, I started in education. I was a teacher and then moved into higher education administration, and then moved into SaaS customer success, first at Coursera and now at LearnUpon. So that's been my career over the last 15 years, but so fascinating to hear the journeys of our 2 panelists. So I'm gonna kick that off with their introduction of what was the journey that brought you to your role, and who are you?
Sure.
Yeah.
By the way, we didn't know she was going to ask us that. So.
If you don't know, if you haven't been on a panel with me, I will always freak people out because I will never tell you what the questions are in advance. I will never ask you something, though, that you can't answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for having us. My name is Ryan Johnson. My journey, I guess, to get here, I used to be a technology user myself, engineering, 3D modeling, design software. And then I moved to a company where I got to help start teaching the software and doing tech support and consulting on the software. Now I'm our director of adoption programs, so I kind of run the teams that do that work and help our clients to get more value out of their software to work smarter.
And what's your software?
All kinds of software, anything for architecture, engineering, infrastructure firms, construction. Autodesk is a big partner of ours, as well as some of our own software that we write.
So, hi. So I am from a company called DNEG. We're a visual effects studio. So it sounds like a lot of people I've spoken to today are using Autodesk in some capacity because they seem to make a lot. So we use some of their other tools.
And we're in Chicago. Architecture should be what we're talking about, famous for architecture, so very, very on brand for Chicago.
Yeah. And in terms of my journey to learning, I came out of university having done an engineering degree, wasn't necessarily sure what I wanted to do with that, and fell into learning in retail. I started off in an Apple store as an employee, and then fell into a learning role there and absolutely loved it, from probably taking the extent of helping my dad with his tech to helping others and teaching people how to do things, and it's just evolved from there. So a lot of what I do is manage our learning technology at DNEG to do content creation and enablement across the teams.
And so Brendan spoke a little bit about our 3 products based on audiences. So Ryan, you're working with a customer audience, Sam with an employee audience, but I wanted to ask you a bit about the journey that you oversee. So ask you about the journey that brought you here, but what's the journey, the customer journey and the employee journey? What's that how do you oversee that? What does that look like in your organization? Sam, for you, what's the employee, it's unique for you of what the employee journey is for your learners?
Yeah, so I mean, all employees, so a large focus of what we use LearnUpon, and the reason why we looked for a platform like LearnUpon was to make sure we're giving people the best and simplest experience for what they need to know to do their jobs. A lot of our staff are either freelancers or on fixed-term contracts. They'll jump between different companies as projects or films or TV shows come along. And a lot of what they do is, even if they've worked at us like within a year, they have to learn something completely different if they go somewhere else. There's a lot of core fundamental bits that are the same, but it's, you know how to do your job, it's how do you do your job using our systems and processes. So when I joined, a lot of that knowledge was shared. Either you sit down at your desk with your peers and they'll help you along, or you refer to intranet pages where it's all documented. And that worked in a capacity, but with COVID, everyone started working remotely and that person was no longer sitting next to you. So that helped kind of invigorate the need to have a learning platform to help manage that. But also, aside from that, something I was looking at from the moment I joined was just directing people to this knowledge or sharing it in person. There's no record of that. There's no tracking of it. And yes, we use it for reporting purposes, saying, has someone done that training? But from a learner perspective, from a manager perspective, and also from our perspective as the kind of the curators, the administrators using the system to understand what's actually being used, having a system that basically allows us to say, yes, I've done all my training. Yes, my team member has done all their training and have access to that. So a large portion of our focus is on the onboarding, making sure there are curated and customized learning paths for everyone. But then also it's, because that's a lot of our turnover, we also want to make sure that we are building on that.
It's interesting because I think your use case is relevant for all employee training, but the way that your company works sort of forces this of you need to be constantly onboarding people into new roles, into new jobs, into new companies. And so I think that's what employee training is, even in sort of normal corporate structure of you do constantly need to be onboarding people into new skills, into new roles, into new needs for the business. That's just so defined of what you need to do of get people immediately available to go on site to do a job.
Yeah, it's rare that someone will step outside one of those streams. They'll move from one department to another. It's more just progression through it. And they might have been with us a year ago and they've come back now with new knowledge that they've gained. But it's then how do they apply that?
And then Ryan, for you, and I want to do a deep dive into onboarding because I think that's really interesting and sort of a place where I think we can evolve from what we've learned from onboarding. But what's the customer journey that you oversee?
Yeah, so Symmetry is a global technology company. We work with a lot of different software, but it's interesting. A lot of the people in our industries still use the fire hose approach, where like you bought a new software, you need to come to a 5-day training and we'll teach you everything about it. And when I was training, I found pretty quick that was a terrible experience. People are so tired by the 3rd day, they're not really getting even 10% of what you're telling them. So a while ago, we started breaking up those large learning topics into much smaller, more focused, workflow-based things. We want people to come in and get quick value and then go back to their office and use it. And then come back the following week for more value. So you get spaced repetition in there. You get a way better customer experience. So that's a big thing that we've done, is break up our training into these very focused topics. Well, now you have the problem of, I've got 180 classes instead of 20. So how do people know what to take next? So that journey and like tying those classes together in ways that fit different workflows or different end users, that's been a big thing that we've been working on.
And so onboarding is interesting to me. I think back to when I was working in higher education, and there was this huge focus on first-year retention and on first-year students, because we saw that's where students would start to fail. That's where you see that students wouldn't continue on. And so huge resources, both personnel resources and financial resources, and so much research went into how do you get students to succeed in their first year. But looking back on that, we became really successful at getting students to move from their first year to their second year. But we lost the plot about making sure that by year 4 or year 5 that they actually ended their university degree with tangible skills and things that they could do to be successful with their degree. And I think universities really fell down on that one and are suffering in part because of that. But I also think that first year, it is so important. It's important, like it's the onboarding new employees is really important. The onboarding experience for new customers is so important. But we tend to, I think because it's easier and it's more, we need less data around it, that we can focus on how do we onboard a new employee, how do we onboard a customer. But that's still a fraction of the journey. That's ideally your employee and your customer is staying with you for 10 or 20 times the amount of time that they spend in onboarding. So how are you thinking about what the life cycle is beyond onboarding? Brian, for you?
Yeah, some of our training plans that we've developed are designed to be renewable. They're not designed to be in the past people would come take one class and then you learned everything you needed to about Revit and then you wouldn't come back. But we want people to continue getting value. So we've designed these renewable training plans. And I think crucially for us is that we have, so education and technical support for our company are in the client success department,
Yep.
not in services.
Yep.
Because they're so core to the client success with the software.
Yeah.
So we actually have a client success person who meets with our clients and helps map out training and paths and helps them to continue to get value. And if we're looking at metrics and we see maybe a certain percentage of the company hasn't been using training in the last year, well, what could they be improving in? Let's look for opportunities to help them to continue to get more out of the training. So that's been pretty awesome for us, getting to build this learning experience that becomes perpetual instead of one time.
And I'm curious if, because I know a lot of people in the audience are also working at software companies and training customers on your software, but you have that background. Did we always have it wrong that you could just train people over a couple days on a software and then they'd be trained, they wouldn't need sort of that ongoing education? Has something changed in software? We spoke in a session earlier this morning of just, right, software is developing more quickly too. And so did something also change in the way that software is developing and the needs to constantly be educating people, or did we just have it wrong all the time?
Both.
Okay.
I mean, I think it could have always been better,
Yeah.
but the more complex that software has gotten, I mean, these days, look at one of them that we use is Fusion, and they have a new release every 6 weeks.
Yep.
So it used to be an annual release.
Yep.
Maybe you would do your onboarding and then you'd come back for every year you'd do a 1-hour what's new session. We can't really do that anymore.
Yep.
So I think the pace of software really identified and accelerated the need to have a continuous ongoing program.
And then Sam, for you, thinking about, obviously you need to onboard your employees to be able to do the job that's right in front of them, but I know you think a lot about sort of the continuous learning piece, and so how are you thinking about that arc? Imagine it's retention, right? You want them to stay, you want them to continue to see value in working with your company?
Yeah, well, of course we want them to stay because
Yeah.
we spend a lot of time investing, training on them and getting them familiar with what we're doing. And when you've got good talent, you obviously want to keep them. Sometimes it's driven by the actual work we have. We get clients get us for a project, and if we don't have anything else for them afterwards, then unfortunately we need to let them go at the end of their contract. But we do want to continue training them, as you said, and develop them. And similar to what Ryan was saying, things change so rapidly. Again, very software based, but also our workflows, our pipeline, our infrastructure is evolving all the time with all the latest technology, and particularly in kind of the visual industry, AI is now this great big monster that's kind of like scaring people, but also we're trying to leverage it.
Yeah.
And that is affecting a whole bunch of stuff from the idea of Gen AI or generative AI. It used to be that you'd have storyboard artists who would sketch out different things. And now what we can do, which is great, and it's changed the way that people have worked, is they would do that sketch and we'll tell an AI system that we built to visualize that in the style that we want. And that's great.
Yep.
But it's training people on those processes and making sure that it all fits in with our way of working. And to build a course on something that's then going to change within a couple of weeks, it's not sustainable, especially with the limited resource and time that we have.
Yep.
So what we often do is do a bit more informal training in the form of knowledge shares. So every week or every other week, different departments, different teams will get together for, they're not necessarily planned presentations. But
And
they
get
will
together
share
in person, get together virtually?
virtually. 'Cause
Okay.
we've got teams spread across the world, but it means that we can also record that and add that to a repository. And if there's anything that is actually we're going to retain and that's not going to change, we will turn that into courseware.
Yep.
So it means that we put a focus on the initial, the onboarding training or any upskilling training that we have to be a bit more generic so that it can stand the test of time. And we can say like some buttons may move or things will change, but for the most part, it stays the same. But it gives us the flexibility to jump in and change them if we need to. And that also ties into kind of how we've built those courses. We tried not to make them too specific to you are in this department, you are in this role.
Yeah.
Because then that creates a minefield of too many different pieces of content to kind of monitor, especially when there's a lot of crossover. So we've made things more task orientated because there's a lot of similar tasks that performed. And it may be, okay, you'll use this piece of software, or you'll use this tool based on your role. And we'll just have like, if you're a compositor, click on this expanding text box to see what you need to do. If you're in the lighting department, you'll do this. So trying to make it adaptable within a single course, but also still leveraging things like branching scenarios, branching learning journeys to avoid the need to say, like, you have to click here to see what you need to know.
And Ryan, for you, because I think a lot about this on the customer education side and how we educate our learn upon customers, but but in the content creation piece of how do you create content that is personalized for roles and personas and tenure and experience, but also that means that you're not creating a unique set of content per user? And I know Brendan spoke about personalization, and so that's, I think there's, and again, personalization not new in L&D. We've been talking about that forever, but how do we thread that between what Sam was saying about making it generic and reusable and evergreen, and then also making it something that's targeted and impactful?
Yeah, I'm thinking the way we're using Learn Upon is maybe a little bit different than a lot of folks because...
Everybody says that, but...
Yeah, maybe, hey, come talk to me if you're in the same boat because I'd love to hear what you're doing. But we primarily use it for live training events. Right, not for content. So the live training event used to be this single point in time. You would go take your class, it would be over. You want more, too bad, your class is over. Well, with Learn Upon, we've been able to create this hybrid experience where maybe your class is a month from now that you signed up for. Well, the second you sign up for it, you get content. You get introduction, so you're getting immediate value. Then you go attend your class, and after the live class, we have supplemental information to kind of review and recap. So I think because of the live component, we can kind of tailor that a little bit to those individuals depending on the class. Every time I teach an Inventor 101 fundamentals, it's not going to be the same. It's going to be a little bit tailored because of that live portion to the folks that are in it. And then I think the second thing is because we've created these very focused courses that are very short, maybe the courses themselves are the same for different personas, but the way we string them together for different personas can be flexible. So you may have one person taking a path and another person from the same company with different needs taking a few different courses. And they're still both getting what they need out of it, but because the content's so focused and because it has the live components, we can personalize it to what individuals need.
And then how do you, once they have completed those courses or learned the skills they needed for that piece of software, how do you then know what they need next? Because I think that's something that I still struggle with. We know, and again, why I think the onboarding piece is easier. You know exactly what a new employee or a new customer needs to know in onboarding, but then it gets fuzzier as you move out, as they've mastered your onboarding content, and now how do you know what they need to know next?
Yeah, I would say that's part of our setup with these client success managers.
Yep.
We have a main contract manager at every one of our clients' companies who's the main person we work with, and we're letting them tell us what they need, right? Because we might not know what initiatives they have coming in the next year, what new things they're going to need to learn. So we're actually meeting with some folks to try to determine what their teams need.
Yeah.
Instead of us telling them, we might not always know. So listen to the client. And I think there's an opportunity.
Do you think they know what they need?
Well, we guide them a little bit. We need to know what they're doing so that we can help. You know, and sometimes we hear something that we don't do yet, and there's an opportunity for us to go get that specialty and create some additional content so that company gets value, and then it expands to all of our other clients as well.
Yeah, we had that debate this morning or conversation this morning, but about, how do you direct people to the content you know they need, but also how do you make sure that you're also capturing signals about what they say they need to know or what they might be showing interest in. And so I don't think we've fully mastered that. I think we're either being very directive of take these 5 courses, or we're saying here's a catalog of 500 courses, pick what you want.
Yeah, and we do some assessments and some services and things that are designed to help discover that type of thing with clients.
Sam, for you, how are you, like, as you're thinking about that content that is more evergreen and more generic, how do you know from, like, the business need, how do you know what that content needs to be?
So it's connecting with the different people across the business.
Yep.
So the way we're structured, you've got heads of departments, but you also have department managers, which will be connecting with the team members on a more regular basis. And it's the feedback from them to understand kind of where are they seeing either a weakness or the lack of experience, or even just what do we need to focus on based on what the project requirements are. So similar to how Ryan was saying, he's got his customer success teams across all his clients. That's effectively the role of these department managers. Yeah. But on top of that, we've got our production teams who are effectively checking in to make sure you know what you're doing. This is your task. Are you on time? Do you need more time for it? And sometimes these are fairly junior people who are assistants and coordinators going across all the different projects, and they're getting that and filtering that up. So it's all about that communication piece. Sometimes we want to try and get it from the learner. So one of the things we've done in our catalog where we've got the banners is we've put a link to a Google form saying, if you can't find what you're looking for, let us know. It's not used as much as I'd like it to be, so I don't get to hear from people in terms of what they want. But the option is there, and we highlight it a lot, and we check in not just with those managers, but also with the key focus groups. And then alongside that, there's also all the technology teams who are building the systems. So if they're saying, we're updating this, we're creating this, we're rolling out this new software, that's how we know, obviously, that there's a need or there's going to be upcoming content or training that we need to do.
And then, Ryan, for what strategy are you looking across the business for to, I mean, obviously we need to train people on this software, and so there's a need for that, but what conversations are you dialing into across the business that is like, this is where we need to improve adoption or to reduce support tickets, or what things are happening sort of outside of your education realm that you're trying to bring in to say, hey, actually, our education program needs to drive this business result?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that's one of the reasons we put technical support and education together underneath me, because I think those connect to each other really well. Like, we'll get a number of tickets in that are how-to cases. That's a clear signal that somebody should be learning that, and they're going to be better served by learning that from our education department than they are from trying to tackle it over a tech support call.
Yeah.
So we can get signals because those businesses are, or those pieces of our business are connected together. And same for Education, if we see trends in technical support, that might be a flag that we need to develop some content or hit something a little differently in our classes to get some better long-term value. And then there's the whole rest of the services department. I work very closely with a lot of them in what they're seeing with their clients when they're out on site with them, what services gaps they see, and how we can complement that with our learning system.
And do you see live learning? I know there's been sort of a pendulum swing of during COVID, obviously we went to remote and a lot of asynchronous learning, and I think there's been a shift back to more live learning, and some of that I think in strategic reasons, and some of it of just it wasn't working great over here, so we're just going to go back to what we know. But what do you, because you do so much live training, what do you think a year from now, 2 years from now, is that, like, does live training still have a place in software training?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
There are a lot of benefits to being live in front of the customer with a consultant versus something that we can't adjust on the fly. And actually, when I say live training, you might be imagining like we're going out to the customer site and sitting in a conference room with them, but we actually built our own virtual education platform to mimic like a digital classroom. It gives like one-click access to virtual computers with software and screen sharing and licensing, which we actually had in place before COVID. It was kind of nice. A lot of people saw this. We just kind of kept coasting. But that makes it, I guess, if you're talking about the change from like people going back to live learning and then going to self-paced learning, I think there's a really important component that the live learning gives us, and because we have the right technology to do that, even when the landscape changes, I think it's always going to be here for us.
And Sam, for you, the live component, I know you do a lot with live learning, and so how does that fit into the strategy for the next year, the next couple of years? Where do you see that changing or remaining the same?
Yeah, live is tricky because it's we have people joining every week in various different roles, so it doesn't always make sense to have a regular cadence of the same session when we're going to have maybe one, if not, or no people in that session. So where we try to do things is have kind of collect them together. We'll have daily check-ins with the new starters or whoever's going through the programs. And that's less of a formal training presentation. It's more you are working your way through this self-paced content, but we're going to support you along that journey, and we can tailor those sessions based on who's in there. But we are still going to be doing live sessions, but they may be less frequent based on kind of what the need is of the business or what the need is for the project. So when someone comes in, if we are rolling out a new piece of software or a new version of a tool, then that will be something that we run presentations and training on.
Live, yeah. And why? Like, just what is the thinking around that of...
It's the initial part of it. So when it is new, we want to know what people's questions are. There are people who are involved in kind of like the testing and the development of it.
Yeah.
But you can do as much testing and beta testing of everything until you make it live. You don't know all the questions that people are going to come up with. So as you put out to that wider audience, we run it as a live session. We capture the feedback on that, and we then take that recording and turn that into training. So, so the live element for us is more about the support along the journey, as opposed to that is how you get your training. But there is also other training that we do that does lend itself to being live, which is going to be maybe more traditional stuff in terms of like L&D side of things. So manager training, kind of career development side of things, where you do want to have people together, you break them out into breakout groups and have discussions so that they get that other side of learning as opposed to the purely functional software side of things, where there is a kind of defined way of doing things.
Yeah.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please.
Oh, we talked about this earlier. I just remembered it. The completion rates for self-paced training that we've experimented with, we have terrible completion rates, which is, I think, a big problem with that.
And terrible benchmark that everybody asks me about completion rates all the time. So if it's not too personal, what are your completion rates?
It depends on which department we're
Okay.
talking about.
Okay.
We mainly have done this for our internal, because we use it for internal training as
Yeah.
well as client training. But I would say some departments are at like 20 or 30%.
Which, if you don't know, in self-paced customer education, that's decent. It's not earth-shattering, and it's a hard 20 to 30% is not something that you feel great taking to a quarterly report or to an executive meeting. It sounds underwhelming, but that's a decent. But it's horrifying in that, okay, then 80% of our customers are not doing anything.
Yeah, and I'm getting all the questions that should have been answered by the training I already built. Anyways, here's where this ties to live learning.
Yeah.
When we were discussing it, the live session has a much higher completion rate because there's a commitment, there's an event on their calendar that's going to happen. So we're actually experimenting now with some more hybrid type training where it is heavier, self-paced, but it still includes these live components,
Yeah.
quick check-ins, very short, low commitment, but I think that will really help with the completion rates. We'll see.
We've also adopted something similar. So even like with our leadership training, there's a program that we've run in the past where it's a 2-hour session every week for 5 weeks with exercises in between. And it's not a massive time commit, but still within the way that our working happens, more often than not, someone's not going to be able to attend all 5 sessions
Yeah.
because they get pulled into something last minute that they need to do. So we've tried to look at how can we shift that 2-hour time commit to smaller bits where the information that is being presented in the session that doesn't actually encourage any engagement, that they just need to like hear this.
Yeah.
How much of that can we shift to self-paced learning, whether it is watching content using interactive e-learning, so that then we can make the most of the time that we do have with them by using that for the discussions and the breakout groups. So, we want to make sure that it's the same group of people so we can continue that conversation. But if we can take that 2-hour session down to a 45-minute session, then even better.
And I think that 2-hour session, I mean, right, I think you mentioned earlier, but I mean, right, there were day-long trainings. Like trainings used to be 5 days. And so 2 hours seemed like we've really cut that down. But now 2 hours it's not micro-learning. 2 hours is still, most people do not have 2 hours. Most people can't pay attention for 2 hours. And most companies do not want employees spending 2 hours on a single training session. Like that's a huge amount of time.
Yeah. And people don't want to pay attention for 10 minutes to a video.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
No, I think I always ask people what their definition of microlearning would be, and you get people are still saying microlearning is 45 minutes because it's been cut down. But
One page.
It's 2 minutes. Somebody sends you a YouTube video that's 4.5 minutes long, and all of us would say, I have no time for that. I cannot sit for 4.5 minutes.
Just jumping back to the completion rates thing
Yep.
as well. So it's really interesting and something we're constantly trying to dive in on, where we have these learning journeys that we've built that people aren't completing, but they're still doing their jobs.
Yep.
That makes us question ourselves in terms of, if they're still doing their jobs and they haven't done the training, then what are we missing?
Yes.
Where are they getting that information
Yep.
from? Is it just someone said, oh, don't do that, I'll just show you how to do it because
Yep.
I need you to get you delivering sooner rather than later? And then what is the impact of that? Are they following something that's not standard because it's, oh, this is my way of doing things?
Yeah.
Are they missing key components? And does a combination of that just lead to problems further down the line? Because if someone's saying, oh, this is my way of doing things, and then someone's getting that piece of work and they're saying, oh, this is missing, where are those notes, or where's this step? Oh, I wasn't told to do that. Why weren't you told to do it? Well, because it wasn't in my training, and the training they did is not the training that we spent hours curating with the people who've asked us to build it.
But Ryan, for completion rates in customer education, I think we think in such the binary of it's either 0 or 100%. But for customer education, do you think that if you were able to say someone's completed 73% of this course, that's a lot? Is that enough? And there's a possibility that they've gotten what they need?
Yes.
Or
I
is
think
like,
there is
or
a
are we still,
possibility.
yeah.
That's one of the reasons why we started zeroing in on specific topics instead of these large, multifaceted training days.
Yeah.
But the question of if they completed it all, how are they still doing their job? I was thinking, but how much faster could they be doing their job, or how much better could they be doing
Yep.
their job? They may have gotten some value out of the 70%. I think they would get more value out of the whole thing. The end goal is the result in their work,
Yes.
not the training that we took, which is part of this shift, right? We don't just look at metrics of what classes you've completed, but we want to know how it's affecting your work, what kind
Yep.
of value you're getting out of it, and that's the kind of statistics that we try to uncover when we meet with clients to investigate how they're doing with our learning.
Yeah, I was talking with Brian from LucidBots earlier today, and he was saying something very similar around it's really important to the company that we know what training people are taking and what their progress is and what they're doing next, but it's not so important how many things they completed, but important to know what else they're doing.
I'd be interested to know from an internal perspective versus a customer perspective, like the mentality of it. Because if I'm a customer and I'm paying for this software or paying for this whatever the solution is, I want to get the most out of it. I want to do all the training that's possible. But that doesn't distill down to everyone in your company. They're just going to say, I need to know what I need to know, and I've figured out the rest. Is that the case? Because again, as an employee, like, we want employees to be able to do all the training, and you'd assume that they want to be able to perform the best they can do, and therefore consume all the training that we've curated and built for them. But it's shifting mentalities of kind of what is higher priority, to start delivering on what you think you already know,
Yeah.
or to actually complete the knowledge. That was more just an open question. I think you were expecting towards. Yeah.
As you were talking, I was thinking one dynamic that's a little different for us is a lot of times we're not charging for this individual course that you took. We have this learning plan that includes whatever you need in this group of things. So we might still have that where somebody could have taken 30 of our small courses, but they really only needed 25 of them, so they're not going to take the other ones. That's fine. We'll discuss it with their contract manager and figure out if they need to be in those or not.
But I think the personalization piece of it, and sort of back to the onboarding piece of whether you're a new employee and you're onboarding to a new role, or you're just bought a software and you're implementing it, those are times where we've carved out time to learn. We understand that that's a period of time where learning is part of what we're expected to do to perform. But then when that's done, and I know I absolutely with this, anytime we're implementing a new software, you plan your time of here's how I'm going to learn it so that we can get this implemented, but you didn't budget for any time outside of that. You didn't budget for the next 2 years to make sure that you're learning new features, that you're learning best practices, like zero budget for that in my calendar. And so I think that's the challenge on customer education side of you have a captive audience a bit in the beginning, but you start to lose them when they don't have the time to learn anymore.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of clients we're looking for are ones with internal learning initiatives or learning departments who have people who actually care about that, because they're going to help us be successful from the inside.
Yeah.
And then we have sometimes a champion from a company who believes in that and is going to make it happen. Even the initial onboarding, like getting it to happen consistently, spacing it out the right amount so they can actually learn and apply quickly. Those are much different depending on the company you're talking to and if the right person is there internally to champion what we want to achieve.
And just as you're saying that, and I know we're getting close to time, but I love this and it's fascinating and it's just this, but it's this hugely complex puzzle to solve and the idea that we would just be creating content and shipping it out, like it is so beyond of understanding the personas, understanding those organizations, understanding your employees, understanding what their day-to-day looks like. It is, if only it was just creating courses, but that actually doesn't get you very far. So on that, curious, in Brendan's keynote talking about the role of the L&D professional. So
Where do you see yourself? Are you chief strategist? Are you platform architect? Are you experience engineer or intelligence analyst?
Yes.
Ditto.
Yeah, because I know we were backstage watching, and so what one stood out to you?
All of them. I mean, it's like many of us wear many hats.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of what Brendan was focusing on and saying in that is we can start to define, as the new technology, as AI is coming into this, how can we then split something off from someone being a content creator, someone being an administrator, to actually something that's more kind of up to date, and how does that kind of give us the option to focus in in one area,
Yeah.
than trying to do everything, the whole kind of jack of all trades, master of none. We're only scratching the surface of what we can do with AI assistive tools. But if I or another member of my team can devote our role to doing that and leveraging and get the most out of it, using agents to kind of build and support everything and integrating with other systems. At the moment, as I say, that is me at the moment. I've integrated with our HRIS system and with our reporting tools.
Yep.
Because I own this project for implementing Learn Upon, but as it's established, I want to start delegating that to people, and it helps give better justification for, we need this person in our team who's going to do this, and therefore we've defined that new role, or rather Brendan's done it for us, which is great.
Yeah, I similarly, I think I could do many of those roles, and that is probably what allows me to kind of direct it to happen. So a lot of times, for example, if we're doing a new thing we haven't done yet, I know what I want it to be, and I will create a sample of that.
Yep.
And say, hey, here's the model of what we need to create next. But then I'm delegating it to other people who can help with the volume and getting it done faster than I could, because there's so many things going on. So I could be in any of those roles, but I like having an eye towards what's happening everywhere.
And I think to close, and I've been thinking about this ever since Riaz shared this phrase years ago. And if you saw him on stage, he's been at our customer conference every year. But the goal of L&D professionals are to get to the big table, and those roles are all conversations at the big table. But content creation is not a conversation at the big table. Completion rates are not a conversation at the big table. And so this is both an opportunity and a challenge for the next year. Sam, Ryan, it's been a delight. I could just have this conversation forever. You've been gems, and let me ask you all the questions that I didn't prepare you for. So thank you so much. Please do chat with them after. There's so many similar conversations happening, so please take the opportunity to pick their brains and also share what you're doing. And excited to introduce our next speaker, Courtney Sembler.